back to another session of the Hopry. My name is Mark Starr.
And I am Tim Pratt.
And today we are going to be looking at my, well, I won't say my personal favorite, but I'm just saying the one that I've looked forward to the most this week. And that is their Smokestack Series Imperial Stout. Now, I've been sitting on this one for about a couple of years now. This one came out in 2008. In fact, the batch number on the back says 2008-1, so it was actually the first round of the first batch. So anyway, how about you, Tim? You looking forward to the Imperial Stout as much as I am, or I think you wanted the Bourbon Barrel?
You know, we got through the Bourbon Barrel Quad, which is the one that I was most looking forward to tonight, but I will say, you know, this one, just knowing what this thing has gone through, I'm excited about it. Yep. It has sat in the bowels of the Hopry now for 2 years.
The bowels of the Hopry Stout. Now, you had an interesting story that I didn't know about this beer. You know, we talk about the Dark Truth Stout and kind of the timing of its release versus the release of this one. So why don't you give us a little, wax a little science on it.
I will wax some poetic science. So at the time that Stephen was really, and when I say Stephen, I'm talking about Stephen Powell's the brewmaster here at Boulevard. Boulevard?
That was so
ghetto. Hi. When I talk about Stephen, the brewmaster here at Boulevard, he actually had called back to some of his brewing friends in Belgium, and at the time, he wanted to know really what was new, what was growing, what was becoming cool in Belgium, and he was quite surprised to learn that it was stouts. And when he set out to brew a stout, he knew he wanted to set out to brew a big, hearty, healthy Imperial Stout. And what he actually brewed the very first time was something that came out just, well, quite recently, which was the Dark Truth Stout. And when he had made the Dark Truth Stout, he knew what he had in mind. And you know, the Dark Truth Stout was brewed with some oats. It had some other spelt malts in it and some other things that, you know, aren't necessarily you know, your run-of-the-mill stout ingredients. But when they were starting to sparge through, he had realized that he hadn't made it quite as big as he wanted it. Beer.
And it definitely has a Belgian quality too, so I don't know if maybe you can talk maybe about the yeast that he used too, because we're not talking about like a Russian Imperial Stout or, you know, even a generic oatmeal stout. I mean, there is definitely some you know, underlying Belgian themes in all of Stephen's beers, including the stouts.
The majority of the beers here at Boulevard have been brewed with essentially a proprietary yeast strain. Oh yeah?
Go ahead.
All right.
It's good.
As he's sitting there laughing, I'll sit here and talk about proprietary yeast strains for a bit. But Boulevard has been able to continuously propagate a specific strain of yeast that they use for, you know, their pale ales, you know, their other ales, their seasonal ales. And most beers that we brew here at Boulevard are brewed with this specific strain of yeast. There is some that we don't use that on. This Imperial Stout was one of them. The Dark Truth was one of them as well. Tank 7 uses its own yeast altogether. But there are some that we want that very Belgian quality, and when I say we, it's just an assumptive we.
Right. And you know, I find it interesting too, because there are, I remember when I first had this beer, I would say I was still kind of, you know, somewhat new to the craft beer world. But when I tasted it, one of the things that stood out to me was that I remember specifically saying, it has a Boulevard taste to it. Like, I could tell that it had, even though it was an Imperial Stout, which is a beer that is usually so robust that it's almost kind of a wash of flavor and coffee and malts and things like that. I remember thinking that it had a very specific Boulevard taste, and that always really kind of intrigued me. And it's sitting right at about 11% as well, which, you know, the Bourbon Barrel Quad here was 11.8. So it's a big beer, but you know, really good. Appreciate that information. You know, it's always good to know the ins and outs of the beers that you're drinking. I know they do a pretty good job of trying to put that on the label as well, but you know, the fact that you actually work here and have to speak about these beers sometimes I think really helps a lot. But in the interest of time, let's enjoy it. Let's smell it and drink it and smell it and drink it and
smell it and drink it some more.
Enjoy this, what would be to you guys a Friday night.
It is Friday, isn't it?
It is Friday. Wow. It's really
nice
Tuesday here, but yeah, I've been smelling it on and off as you've been talking, and I'm telling you, it's really beautiful, and I'm not even trying to fluff in any way.
No,
this is
absolutely
an amazing smelling beer.
There's aromas that are coming off of this beer that honestly are reminiscent of some of the best Imperial Stouts that I've ever had, and you know, one of those that comes to mind, which I'm I can't quite place right now is the Old Rasputin 12th anniversary. It's got that almost aged characteristic to it, and you know, wow. I mean, this one wasn't aged at all. What's even funnier is there's a lot of this sitting in barrels in the barrel room. I don't know what those are going to be.
They'll be good is what they're
Whatever it is, they're going to be good.
I'll tell you what this one really reminds me of. It reminds me of the Black Albert from Stroy's. Because it really does have that Belgian quality. You know, a lot of things like the North Coast, Old Rasputin, some of the other Imperial Stouts here, they don't really have that Belgian character like this one does. I'm really getting that Belgian yeast out of it. Okay, let's drink it. Wow. Oh,
that doesn't suck.
I need a minute.
It's amazing what 2 years can do for a beer.
I mean, this thing,
it's really nice. There's a little bit of latent heat to it, simply because you know it's an 11% alcohol. There's a lot of booze in this beer, but
I want to point out. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to say that the booze that I'm getting out almost comes across as a bitterness in terms of how it feels on your tongue, and I think you really kind of need that in this beer. But I'm telling you right now, this is a highlight for me this year. I'm not going to lie. I've had some really good beers this year, and this is probably in the top 5 of the beers that I've had. I'm really happy with the way this thing is aged. Again, it's been down there for 2 years. And I'll tell you what, after 2 years, if this beer tastes this good, I mean, I'm going to save that other one for probably Christmas of 2012.
Yeah,
because this is pretty great, and it's got that real robust coffee stickiness that you might get from, you know, like a 1050. It's not as viscous as, say, a Dark Lord or something like that, but in terms of flavor and impact, I think it's right up there with something like, you know.
I mean, the mouth feels really nice.
Yeah, it is.
You know, if you can see, like, the bubbles within the head are incredibly small, incredibly tight, as you would want on a good stout, and it just stays put. So every time, you know, you're taking a drink in, you're getting every quality of the aroma that this thing has to push through, and it's going to give a nice roastiness to it. Mark said a nice, like, coffee bitterness, but the only time that alcohol heat comes through is when that bitterness is going away and it's finishing off in the back of your palate. That's when that roasty, that heat comes through, but you don't really pick up on it as an alcohol heat, because it carries right through, along with, you know, just the roastiness of the chocolate and, you know, probably the black patent malt.
I'll tell you, this is the perfect way to end Boulevard Week on the Hopry. I want to personally thank Boulevard for allowing Tim and I to come down here and record these sessions. I feel very fortunate to live in a city that has such a great brewery as we do here, though I would like to see more of these beers on my shelves, that, you know, but hey, there's only so much you can produce, and I get that. But I'll tell you, man, I have really enjoyed all 3 of these beers. And I think of all the brewers out there in America, I think Stephen is really kind of up there with all of them, and he can come to the table with something really great.
He's got a passionate idea of what beer is and what he likes in beer, and the one thing that he has mastered is showing you guys his passion for beer, and that's where he excels.
Stephen, please make some more Saisons. You are the Saison king. That's on record, and that's on camera.
That is on record. We've got it notated.
And Julie will send that to him so that he can hear it.
We will say this is a first, not only at the Hopry for being the first on-location site, this is the first time we have had a studio audience.
All right.
There's our studio audience. We hope you heard her. But we wish you could be here with us. We wish you could see the skyline with us. And really, most of all, we really wish you could be here drinking some beer with us.
Yep.
But you're not. So we're going to drink it for you.
All right.